Welcome to this video. It's great to be sat back in the chair. I promised you I'd be consistent, and here we are. The last video that I put out was a live video, and I had some teething problems with the audio. Sound were only coming out of one side, but I hope you can forgive me. That's been fixed. The next time that we do a live, there'll be crisp, delicious audio coming out of both speakers. I must stress that I wasn't intending to do a live. I just wanted to test my setup, but there will be more lives because I feel that it were a raging success. I don't know if you agree with me. I'm always interested in where you are from around the world, so let me know in the comments whereabouts you're coming from, what it is that you want to see on this channel, because I promise you we'll talk about it. This is our channel. If you're not subscribed to this channel, hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you can keep up to date with the things that we're doing. So on to a couple of things before we get into the meat of today's video. I want to talk about my website. If you go over to www.sleightoffmind.co.uk, you'll be able to find the newest products that I'm putting out on the market. And if you're in a pinch, you can go to www.peterturner.co.uk. And you might be wondering why I'm mentioning this. The reason that I mention it is about a week ago, I did my Blackpool lecture and people flew in from all around the world, but there were people that couldn't make it for whatever reason. And the notes are available from that lecture on the website. And they're only available to the people on YouTube and on the Blackpool Magic Group, because these are the only places that I'm advertising them. So if you go across to the website, you search out the notes, you'll be able to see some of the things that I did in the lecture. So now onto the subject of today's video. Today's video is dedicated to one of the most embarrassing things that can happen to you during a performance as a mentalist or a magician, but mainly a mentalist, because you're supposed to be able to read minds. Now I'm going to give you a few seconds to figure out what you feel that might be. What do you feel the most embarrassing thing that can happen as a mentalist is? Okay, so the time's up. It's forgetting somebody's name. Think about that for a second. As a mentalist, what's your excuse for forgetting somebody's name? Now, it might seem like a small subject because you might be confident enough just to turn around and say, sorry, I forgot what your name is. Can you tell me again? And that's a viable solution, but I don't feel it's the best solution. So today's video, I'm going to teach you tips on how to remember people's names, how to side skirt having to use people's names, and how to save yourself if you forget somebody's name. Now, you might be questioning, well, I'm a mentalist. Why do I need to ask somebody's name in the first place? That's a subject for another video, and I've got a lot of tips, subtleties, and tricks that'll help you get around that problem. But today's problem is solely if you forget it or you need to remind yourself what it is without having to ask. So let's say that we've become acquainted, we've given a reason for why we're asking for somebody's name. You're during the middle of a performance, you require somebody's name in a routine like Midas Touch because there's two different spectators, and you forget. You're just about to go into Midas Touch and you're like, oh, I don't remember this person's name. I don't want to make out like I've forgotten. But what you do want to do is refer to somebody by the name they've given you to appear to be gracious and courteous. So how do you get out of that? Well, I created a number of years ago a thing called Forget Me Not. And Forget Me Not is the perfect excuse to re-ask somebody their name without them ever knowing that you're re-asking their name. And that sounds like a really strange question. Let me explain. I'm in performance, I've forgotten this person's name here, I'm going to turn to them, and instead of saying, excuse me, what's your name again, I say this line. You know, it's really strange. What people don't know is our names actually dictate our heritage, and if we can work out somebody's heritage, we can work out their roots and their culture, and by working that out, we can better understand them. So let me show you what I mean. My last name's Turner. And Turners were metal lathe workers, and a lot of people don't know that in the medieval periods, we were actually named after what it is that we did as a job. So I'm going to ask, what's your full name? So I'll go, what's your full name? And I do this with my hands that suggests, what's your full name? And they'll go, and then they'll repeat their first name, say their middle name and their last name. When they give you their last name, all you have to do is make something up that sounds like it's reasonable. So for example, if they say Greenwood, you'd say, you might not believe this, but it's more than likely, it's not 100%, and hold your hands up and say that, it's not 100% that your job were to tend to wooded areas or wooded glens and make sure that they were fruitful and vibrant for travellers that were passing through. Which tells me that you're an organic person, you're the sort of person that cares about your surroundings, you're the sort of person that probably prefers animals to people. Now you sprinkle in a couple of Barnum statements and you move on now because you know the person's first name. You just make up whatever you want, make up a sentence, or if you can't think of something to label them as a job because it's so difficult, let's say that they said Knee or something like that, my name's Richard Knee, and you just don't know what to say, what you say is, okay, now you don't know what that means, but to me, I already have a feel of what your job might have been in the past, or your family's jobs might have been in the past, and therefore I feel you're the sort of person. Now just sprinkle in a couple of Barnum statements and move past it knowing this person's name. It's a very simple tip. It's very, very simple, and it might be easy to overlook. But what you've just done there is you've deepened their understanding of what it is that you do, because all of a sudden you've given them a reading. You've gained more credibility because you've sprinkled in Barnum statements and found a place to sprinkle in those Barnum statements. And they don't have to be long. It can be nice and simple. It doesn't matter if you're using intuition-based mentalism or psychological-based mentalism, because it fits both of those categories. You're asking them a question about themselves, they're giving you a piece of data, and now you're firing back your deductions or whatever it is that you've intuitively perceived by looking at them. So this tip strengthens any area of performance. So again, one more time. So I don't know if you know this, but what we did in the past dictates what our last name is. For example, my last name is Turner. Now go look up what your last name means so that you can fire out what it is. But my family were metal lathe workers. Therefore, that meant they were resilient. They worked in all sorts of conditions, and it enables me to give a reading, right? It enables me to continue. And now I say, so what's your full name? And I do this, what's your full name? I don't just go, what's your full name? Because they might just go, give me the last name. I go, what's your full name? And this little hand gesture is a thing called sheep theory, which we will get into in another video, but now they're going to give you the full name. Let's say, for example, that you get into a situation where people are using each other's names, but you haven't asked, but you don't want to get them wrong and you're not sure if you're right. Sometimes it's nice just to call people player 1, player 2, player 3, and so on and so forth. And your excuse for doing so is that you're going to turn to each person, you're going to say, now, before we get to know each other on a personal level, and we will become acquainted later on, for now, if you don't mind, I'd like to call you player 1, you player 2, and you player 3. And I need you to remember that you're player 1, that you're player 2, and you're player 3. The reason that I need you to remember this is because I'm going to be referring to you by player 1, player 2, and player 3. But what this means there's no way that I could have referenced social media. There's no way I could have looked you up because I don't know your names. When I've proved to you I can do what I do, and I get to know you a little bit better, then I'll take your names, we'll become acquainted, and we can get into the nitty-gritty of the deep stuff, right? So whatever it is that your sentence or your script is there, you've excused the reason that you're calling them player 1, 2, and 3. Now in something like Midas Touch, you say, okay, so you're player 1, you're player 2. So I want you to, player 1, just close your eyes for me. And now you've given a reason why you're not asking for the name. So now you might be saying, well, I don't want to use player 1, player 2, player 3, and I find it really difficult to remember names. So what I do is if I'm ever in a situation where I need to remember somebody's name, I'll get them to tell me an interesting fact about themselves. Sounds really silly, but I promise you this is one of the biggest things that you'll ever learn. It becomes an instant mnemonic. You say, tell me a random, interesting, maybe funny fact about you. Tell me a little funny story about you. And now finish up by saying their name at the start of it. Now repeat back to them the bullet points of the funny story and then their name at the end of it. And now you're more likely to remember it. You're more likely to remember it because there's a mnemonic that's attached to it. And these are all very important little tips. This video might seem like a very short video. It might seem like it's something that I'm just glossing over what happens in performance when that happens to you, but it's not. It's a really important moment in performance. And when you couple this with the things that I've talked about in the last videos, so if you've not seen the last videos, the links will be in the description. I talked about the importance of practice and how to practice if there's nobody there. I talked about how to make your plots interesting, how to make the things that you're showing interesting. And it's all well and good when you've got a million tricks and a million interesting plots to go out there and start performing, but then you start to need to be personable. You need to have a personal connection with the people that you're performing on, especially as a mentalist. And if you can't remember people's names, that's a very difficult thing to navigate around. So me giving you that tip of using the heritage called Forget Me Not to be able to then give them a little reading and deepen your credibility as a mentalist, or side-skirt it by using the player tip, or attach the mnemonic using the little joke or interesting fact. I promise you that once you start to implement these things into your performance, you will never seem like you've forgotten somebody's name again. So it's a very quick video today. I will be back with another live video at some point this week, and I do have a big video coming up on character development. And that's a good one because it shows you my character from start to finish. I talk about my diet, I talk about other things that help me go from being what I was to what I am now, and how I got myself from performing in rooms with 1 or 2 people to people queuing for hours to come and watch me whenever I go to somewhere like the Blackpool Magic Convention. With that said, I think that about wraps today's video. Thank you for checking this out. Like I said earlier, like and subscribe to the videos, and take care.